What do you love about being outside and active?
I'm sure I've spent more time outdoors than in. That just feels like home.
Enjoy what you can do, because you never know what is around the corner.
Just being outdoors in the fresh air, it just clears my mind.
Fully immersed in nature is what brings me the most joy.
Hello and welcome back to the Outside and Active podcast, where this week we find out how Pilates can support your running thanks to our special guest, Helen Wragg. Helen is a self-confessed Pilates geek with a high anatomical knowledge. Her aim is to help you to implement change that is impactful on your life and ensures that you achieve your goals, no matter what they are. Whether you're starting from the beginning or have been running for years, Helen can support, guide, and ensure you progress every step of the way. She's also the founder of MoveFlow, who use equipment to help people reach these goals, whether it's in sports, fitness, or just everyday life. If you're listening to this, then please take 10 seconds to literally leave a review, whether you're listening to this podcast on Apple or Spotify. It makes a massive difference, and forward this episode onto someone who you think would benefit from it just as much as you. Without further ado, let's head straight into this week's episode with my guest, Helen Wragg. Helen, welcome to the Outside and Active podcast. I'm very much looking forward to learning something new today and passing on all your knowledge to the people that are listening to this, and selfishly for me to take on all of that information. But just before we jump into that conversation, I'm going to start with an opening tradition that we do on every single podcast, and that's by offering you a piece of advice. And that piece of advice comes from a previous guest on the podcast, and it comes from a lovely man called Mark White, who is the founder of Run Grateful, which is all about running a grateful mile and taking time out to really recognize what we're grateful for in life and doing that through the medium of running. And his advice is to have an open mind and try new things. He said you might not like that new thing, but at least you've tried it. Have an open mind in life, take opportunities and try new things, which is kind of what I'm going to be doing in this. I'm going to be having an open mind and taking on the wealth of knowledge that you're going to be talking about and your specialism and what, in your own words, say you are geeking out on. So firstly, thank you and welcome to the podcast. What's your reaction to that advice from Mark?
It's great advice, and it's making me smile because this is my first live podcast, and it comes from that, because you can have these opportunities and shy away from them quite easily and hide them. So yeah, it kind of feels quite nice to be on here today. So thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to come and kind of geek out with everyone.
Perfect.
Share a bit about Pilates.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get into that, but the first question that I ask to every single guest, I'm going to ask to you now, is what do you love about being outside and active?
I've always been outside and active. I till recently had a huge German Shepherd dog, so we were always out walking on the hills. But for me, it is just being on my own. Weird thing to say, but I love being on my own. I love that, not having any agenda or a plan, just going with it and just going out and moving, and sometimes running, sometimes walking. And when I go out, I actually went out today and I wasn't sure whether I was going to run or walk, and so I always had an agenda. I was always like, I'm going to run, I'm going to hit these many miles, or I'm going to bike. But now, as I've kind of got a bit older, I'm kind of a little bit more open to just seeing where it takes me. And I like that for my mind, because, it's an active mind to live in. So
absolutely.
It helps with all of that.
Yeah, have you always had a kind of always been interested in play sport when you were younger, always kind of wanted to get outdoors and connect with nature? Or is it something that's developed over time?
Yeah, so I was proper sport girly at school. So I played netball for county, played hockey, did gymnastics as a child. And then I actually worked as a professional dancer for 15 to 18 years. So, and then kind of progressed into what I'm doing now. So I always had the urge to move, always been a mover from being 3 years old, really. So, yeah. And like to be part of a team, like to encourage other people to move. Yeah, because movement is medicine for me. It's like, it gives me a lot in everyday life. It helps me stay focused.
Well, I was always the kid at school that put their hand up and asked the stupid question that actually probably a lot of other people were thinking in the classroom. And I'm going to do that now because a lot of people, Pilates, yeah, I know what Pilates is. Well, actually, what is Pilates for you? What is the core purpose of it? What does it set out to achieve, and why is it so important?
So for me, and how I teach it and how I approach it is, I love to think of it as like a toolbox that I can pass on to people. And I always say, I've got a studio in Halifax, in West Yorkshire, that we don't do Pilates to get good at Pilates. We do Pilates to enable us to do the other stuff in life, whether that be out running, whether that be out on your bike, or we getting on the floor to play with your grandchildren, whatever it is. Yeah. And that's where I come from with Pilates. I try and give people like the ideas around why they should do it, but to encourage that it's for everyone, and that it can enhance what you're doing, what you're passionate about, whatever that might be. Because
a word that you've already said a couple of times, and I imagine is a word that is going to be brought up a lot of times in this, movement. And you just said before we started recording, you're an anatomical movement geek, and a fascination with the body and how it moves and why it moves. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Yeah. So my son was laughing at me today in the car, actually, because he said you automatically scan people, and I don't know how I'm doing it. Do you know, like when I'm walking down, because when you're looking at how we kind of move and end up moving through life, the nervous system's fascinating because it always finds a way forward, whatever that kind of way might be. And so we all end up with our own run, our own walk, and our own kind of wear and tear and things that can come around that. So for me, movement and what I teach is about kind of looking at the body, how you can bring it better back to balance, and we teach quite differently. We look at alignment. We talk about fascia. We were talking about core the other day, and like this idea that people come to us a lot and say, I need to strengthen my core. And core is a big word. It's a big buzzword. And I know you hear it a lot, maybe in the running industry, like you need a strong core. And it doesn't really exist in an anatomical point of view. So like an apple has a core. So we know that there's an apple core, and it's like the center. The earth has its core. And so when you look at the human body and you think about what is core, it's really interesting because does it really exist? If you Google it, it brings out kind of like some anatomy around your center, like the rectus abdominis, the transversus abdominis, all these kind of center muscles. So then it gives people an idea that if they want to become strong, they need to get almost strong and fixed and build this hard center. When you look at anatomy and how we move, it's quite the opposite. So we're more of a balanced biotensegrity system. We're not a hinged fixed system. So because I would have originally, I would have again, my brain went, need to have a strong core that kind of relates to abs and stomach and kind of again strength, whereas you're kind of saying yes, okay, maybe a little bit of strength, but it's all about maybe movement and flexibility and rotations rather than necessarily strength.
So everything's connected. It's about the whole body. If you look at the nervous system, and our nervous system doesn't know that we've got glutes, it doesn't know that we've got biceps, it just knows that we are connected. So, and this is my favorite toy I'm going to show you. So biotensegrity.
Oh my word! Okay. For the people listening, it's like a big star. That, I mean, you explain it probably a lot better than I will.
So it's a structure. So bio is like living, and then tensegrity means that it's got compression and tension quite equally. So it's like we're like a pop-up device. It's a toy. You get these toys in the toy shop.
Yeah, it squeezes right down into a little ball, but when you expand it out, it all all the links stretch out. Yeah. All
the links link. One thing affects another thing. So
Okay, like cogs in a
you were saying
machine.
about your hamstrings earlier. Yeah, if you go, like I've been, and I've needed to go to osteopath when I danced, or I've needed to have a quick fix because we're giving that long-term hammer to our bodies as dancers. We need to get back into the show. So you go, you get fixed, you get back in. And then there's sometimes taught that you need to strengthen your glutes, you need to strengthen your quads, and there's that kind of idea that we have to kind of work on this one part of our body. But our body doesn't work like that. So, and it all starts from the feet. So I geek out lots about feet, especially for runners. So if your ankle dorsiflexion, so the movement around the ankle's stiff, or your foot stiff, then it's going to affect how you hip moves in the pelvis. So if the ankle's restricted, the hip will be restricted. And that takes you back to when you see like runners with a little flip or a walk that's gone a little, you see all kinds of ways of traveling forward, which is great. So then to look at Pilates and look at how we can approach from the whole body connective system is a lot better way of making your run faster, more efficient. So we're looking for efficient movement so we can run for longer, for faster, without wearing out. Wearing out's a big thing.
Well, I was going
and if you're balanced,
no, carry on.
It's less chance. Yeah. So if your foot ankle dorsiflexion's not as efficient as it should be, then there's going to be some pull and swinging going on above the knee joint and the hip joint. And if you're pounding the road with an ankle that's not set up, then the rest of it will go. So going back to the point to say I need to strengthen my core is like, you could, it's a place to start and it's something to consider. But in Pilates, we consider the whole body from the feet upwards, and we're constantly looking at all the connections.
So it's interesting because I've always, well, not always, but I have learned and known that if you have an issue in your back or your shoulder, it might be connected to something that's happening lower down and vice versa. And it, like you said, everything's connected. I've known that through family members having issues with backs, and actually they're saying, oh no, it's with knees, and it's not an issue with your knee. It's happening lower down, and it's all kind of connected. But I hadn't quite considered feet because weirdly, I'm glad that you said that, because in the gym recently, say the last month, I've seen a lot more of the PTs that are taking sessions with people, and they're getting them to work on their bare feet, roll, say, on like a broom handle, or think about flexion of ankles and flexion of feet. And I've gone, ignorantly gone, what is that helping? I don't quite understand if they've got issues with their feet, but now it's all kind of making sense in terms of you say, well, actually it's connected to maybe something higher up with their hips. And especially you said there with running, with it particularly impactful because if you're a road runner, it's the same movement, it's the repetitive impact that you're having. And that's why people have injuries running, especially. I mean, it's usually what's with running, hips, knees, ankles that we seem to see a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that for us, for me, my aim is to not outlive my body and to still be able to be outside and be active when I'm in my 80s and 90s. My mum's in her 80s, my nan lived to be 97. So genetically, I'm like on for a win. So I want to like not outgrow my body. I want to still be able to do all the stuff. And if I don't pay attention and slow down, I'm in my 50s now, and start to look at what's going on from all the wear and tear and everything that's happened beforehand, that I'm going to wear out. And I don't need to, because bone remodels, it's got a 7-year recycle. So it'll constantly remodel itself. So if you've got a spur, or you've got the osteoclast going in and creating it, and it's created because there's a pull of force, so it's got interested, and it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it needs to go in and reforce because there's something pulling it in a place where it shouldn't be. And then at the other side, you've got the osteoblasts that come in as well. And so you've got this restructuring of your bone growth until the day you leave this planet. So it's not an age-limited thing. You can still realign and mindfully move and do some things to the day we're left. and then you've got this opportunity to be outside and do what you love doing and still have all them benefits. There's no need to go in for the knee up. There's no need to get. And if you've got there already, it's not that you avoid it. It's happened. It's wear and tear has happened. And I'm not saying that surgery isn't a good thing, but if you get to it before, it can definitely be prevented if you don't ignore the yellow flags and you start just, like you were saying about the feet, just sitting on the sofa at night time, massaging the knuckles of your feet and just interlinking your fingers into your toes and just really bringing some mobility back to the foot and some mobility is going to be so beneficial. It can upgrade instantly. That's a great thing about a nervous system. It likes an upgrade and it's quick to drink it up and change. It's always looking for the best way to move if we give it the right feedback.
I'm glad you touched on there about people staying active later in life, because we had a webinar where it was all about running in 40s plus, and we asked for questions from people that were watching, and one of the questions that was cropping up quite often was like, how can I keep, my body's hurting a bit more, the recovery's taking longer, what can I do? And strength training was one of those things, and recovery. But Pilates was another one of the things that was brought up to help people continue to move later in life. And like you said, not outlive their bodies. And it reminded me of that when you just said, you said about, who's this for? Who's Pilates for? Because some people might go, I've seen before, it's too late for me to either start running. It was too late for me to pick up Pilates, and it's too. I mean, I have even had it written down. God, I'm a piece of plank of wood. I'm not. There's no saving me. It's too late for me. But actually, Pilates is for everyone. It's a loaded question, this, but Pilates is for anyone, and no matter what age.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a starting point for anyone, no matter what. That's what I love about it. There's always something, like people come to us out of surgery, people come to us after childbirth, before childbirth. There's all kinds of walks and things that come through our door. And the great thing about Pilates, it's like, right, there's somewhere you can start. There's somewhere where you can start. We always look at empowering people in movement, so you don't need to be in pain. So, and if you're in pain, we'll give you some breathing. There's always something that can help and help with where you're at. And Pilates is amazing. This is what I love about Pilates and running, because Pilates is amazing for breathing. It's like fundamental to everything we do. And going back to the core thing, what sometimes can happen with the diaphragm, especially if you're in pain, and I know as runners, I mean, I've been there in my life where you've just you train through pain. Yep. It's not been my best decision, but we all do it because we love what we do. Yep. So you just keep going. And then what can happen is you get a bit more global, the stability switches off, so it gets a bit of where you're higher risk of injury. And then the other thing that can happen with the diaphragm, it can start to be the muscle that's trying to hold everything together. So instead of them breathing and your diaphragm moving down and the pelvic floor expanding and all this diaphragmatic breathing that we need as a runner for a long distance or short distance sprint, the diaphragm contracts and stays contracted because it's bracing, trying to brace and hold everything together. So you end up breathing up, and then you end up, so your breath ends up going up, and you end up doing this kind of lateral kind of all up in the neck area breath, which interestingly enough is how lizards breathe. Right, okay, I was not expecting that. Randomly onto lizards. But if you watch it, and that's what the belief is we evolved from, so we're taking ourselves back to when we evolved, and a lizard either breathes or it runs. It can't do both. And that's because it has to do this lateral effort kind of breathing. It's not efficient. So it can't run and breathe like that at the same time. So just as a comparison, it's like, okay, so I need everything to be easy, this kind of flow through my body, you're not trying to strengthen like a wall, you're trying to find ease of movement and balance and structures so that your whole fascial system can kind of communicate well, and your breath is there for you, so you can run for further without getting tired.
The majority of this conversation so far has been touching on the physical impacts and physical positivities of Pilates. But I'm interested also in the part that mental connection and mindfulness plays into this as well. I mean, is there a connection there? And if so, how important is that?
Absolutely, because to make these changes and to kind of come into your body and notice, you have to slow right down. You kind of get out of your head. And as you know, like we are a kind of town of walking heads a lot of the time. We're in, just because, you know, I mean, by that, it's
Absolutely.
like where we are and how we live. And so to actually stop and just kind of think, okay, how, especially before you go out for a run, it's quite good to just have a moment to just go, right, how am I actually feeling today? Are my ankles stiff? Would I benefit from just doing a bit of rolling on the ball and just let my ankles loose before I go? We don't really check in with ourselves very often. And Pilates is huge for that. That's the biggest feedback I get from people I work with, is that it's the mental space that they get and the reset afterwards, because they can't think about anything else apart from the moment, because I'm asking them to tune into themselves and to be in their bodies and not in their heads.
So is there, again, I'm going to try and maybe enforce a connection here, but there's such a thing as, you know, people that runners high, and that feeling of, you know, you don't regret a workout and you come back and you feel sort of refreshed and you feel that sort of endorphin rush. So with Pilates, I imagine maybe it's not an endorphin rush, but is there sort of a sense of relaxation? And I mean, you're going to be able to answer this, you know, put it into words better, but is there a sort of cathartic sense with this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a real reset, a real moment of like having a reset. And then sometimes, depending on what we've done, there's like a reset, and then there's a moment of like, I'm ready to take on the world. And you could then go and run a marathon, because you've just, your whole body's feeling aligned. You're feeling like, because when you're out of alignment, it's tiring. It's hard work for the muscles. So there's mental reset, there's a body reset. And like we've talked about, the breath, there's a lot of you can reset your breath quite quickly. And so there's that sense of coming out of kind of flight and fight, which we live in a lot, and coming back into this sort of system where all them endorphins are released, and where stress is no longer. And that's a huge part of what people get from doing Pilates, definitely.
I might be committing a cardinal sin by asking this, but the main difference, maybe similarities and differences between Pilates and yoga.
So I would say Pilates is more prescriptive.
Okay.
Yeah. So we prescribe. We teach the person in front of us. We teach movement that is needed at that point in time for that person. And we can really, as I said, have a starting point and be quite open to what we teach. And with the yoga, it's more of a discipline that has that follows sequences, rather than it be more prescriptive.
So it's similar. Similar to if I know with PTs, they say when someone comes in to be a PT, someone comes to a PT and they're saying, you know, I need help with X, Y, Z. You don't just go in and show them some run of the mill workout. Oh, here's your push pull legs. You're probably going to ask them questions around, okay, well, why do you want to lose weight or gain muscle or be stronger in your legs? Like why? Like what's behind it? And it's a lot more of a kind of, there's that human approach first, and then you go into creating some plan for them or supporting them. Is there a similar approach for you when people come to you and say, well, I'd like, you don't just say, okay, well, here's a basic set of 10 movements. You will talk to them, understand why, you know, potentially previous injuries, current injuries, what they want to do in the future, and then use that word again, start to prescribe them with specific movements, all from your kind of bank of knowledge. Yeah, absolutely. So we're always looking at what your goal is. Okay. Yeah, whether it is to rehab or to, and then we do a bit of the assessment, like I talk about. We look at the body and the assessment, where the pulse and the alignment is going. But yeah, it's very, very prescriptive, and we can
we can put a program together for for, say, take example for runners, because we're in the runners, a lot of runners have tight hamstrings. And there's a really easy little reset you can do straight away to just reset your hamstrings. And so to hold and stretch hamstrings, you're going up against your system. So if you were to, do you want to do it?
I do.
Do you want to reset your hamstrings?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay.
It's really easy.
Okay, here we go.
Just stand up.
I'm standing up. Okay, the microphone's coming with me.
I'm going to take these out. And you have to kind of, so you're going to feel where, let's see if I can just move back a little bit. You're going to feel where your psoas is. So we know the psoas is like a big part in the hip flexion, yeah?
Yeah.
And it comes in, I'm going to get this right. It comes in at T12.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it attaches down to your lesser trochanter.
Okay.
So your lesser trochanter is the knobbly bit at the top of your thigh bone. So you have to kind of, my camera's in a good place, but you have to feel in the lesser trochanter and feel at your T. So have one hand here, and then the other hand on the inside of your thigh. And if you feel deep enough in, you'll feel the knobbly bit on the inside of the thigh is the lesser trochanter.
I can.
So you have to go between your legs.
Yeah, I can. I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to show you, I just happen to have a pelvis. As you do.
This has been the strangest conversation I've ever had.
There,
okay.
And that's your greater trochanter. So you're kind of right in the inside of your groin and kind of trying to feel that bit. But you can actually feel it if you get down there and just feel in there. And then all you're going to do is bend your knee.
Yeah.
And lift your leg up, and you'll know that the psoas has got shorter.
Okay.
And then you take your leg all the way behind you, like your strike's going to step back.
Okay.
And your psoas has got longer. You're just going to pick the knee up.
Pick the knee up.
Yeah. And then just tap the leg behind you.
Yeah.
And you're keeping your hand on them 2 points.
Yes.
Inside the thigh. So the psoas is getting shorter and your psoas is getting longer. And can you feel that when you bring it up here, there's a possibility that this deep internal muscle could get short, and then when you take the leg behind you and stretch it out behind you, you feel it's getting long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just do that a few times with that thought. So this is where the mindful thought comes. It's getting shorter, it's getting longer, and you just say that to yourself and you envision it. Kind of Eric Franklin, he does a lot of stuff like this. He's good. And then, so when something is more in tune and more balanced, you become more stable. So then if you just stand on that leg and balance on the leg you've just moved and just kind of check in. Yeah. And then stand on the other leg and compare and see what the stability's like.
Yeah, I'm not even saying it just because I'm talking to it. It definitely is different.
Upgraded, yeah.
Upgraded.
So
quick reset. That not only is that helped me right now, that is advice for people at home. And I hope no one was looking through the window of where I'm recording, because they'll be thinking, what is going on? That I've not in doing almost close to 100 podcasts, and someone got me up and done some practical activities. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. There we go.
So it's a really simple reset.
I like that, and that's good. And I like, jokes aside, we've just got up and tried that, and people listening can try that at home. I like having conversations with things that people can take away and put into their lives afterwards. I think that's such an easy thing that people go, oh, okay, I'm having issues with this. I can take that piece of advice away and actually work that into my own fitness journey and help, whether it's recovery or anything that we've spoken about. So thank you for that piece of advice. That was a nice bit of activity on a Tuesday afternoon when we're recording this. I've lost where I'm at now. We've just done some well, actually, I was going to ask around. People have such busy lives. People, people are stressed and busy, whether it be life and family and kids and work and all that type of thing. And I maybe think, I've got to get my 8 hours of sleep in, and I've got to make sure I go to work, and I've got kids, and I've got to go for my run, and then I've got to do my strength training to support my run. And so, where am I going to find time for this? And maybe this just falls by the wayside. But how do you encourage people to work Pilates into their busy lives?
It's something that we always consider at the studio and then with MoveFlow online is, so I always give people 10 minutes or 15 minutes on small exercises like we just did there.
Yeah.
So because it's not that you need to go and do an hour's Pilates class. This is the little snippets that you're going to learn along the way that's going to keep you in fine tune.
Yep.
And it becomes more of a lifestyle and more of paying attention to yourself and sharing it with anyone around you. And it's the little things that you do throughout your life, and you end up just kind of building them in naturally, because you'll think, oh, that was really useful, I did that. Like even just sitting talking to you when I'm at the desk and I'm doing stuff, I'll have a towel rolled up underneath my sitting bones.
Yes.
Because it just helps me to really, and then I'll take it out, so I'll vary what I sit on. And just little things like that throughout your day that can really just enhance you as a runner and your passion, whatever it might be, whether it be cycling, running, walking, hiking, and back to what you love. And it's not that you're going to do Pilates, like I said, at the beginning. To get good at doing Pilates, you're going to use it to help you stay doing what you love in life. And to fit it in, it's going to be 10 minutes at the side of your bed before you go to sleep, just to reset your spine maybe and to open out. Or in a morning, I have a little ball, and I do all my footwork while I'm doing all breakfasts and doing all of that.
Yep.
My son grew up thinking that everybody did heel raises while they clean their teeth. He's like, why are you doing your heel raises and cleaning your teeth?
Yeah, that's something I've started to incorporate in as well. That's just
incorporating in.
Yeah, it's little tips like I always say about if people want to get health and fitness. It doesn't have to be going to the gym for an hour. It can be, instead of standing on the escalator or on the tube, it's walking up it. And these are what you've just said there is an example of types of things that actually you can work into. Even if you finish a meeting 10 minutes early on purpose, use that 10 minutes to do a piece of exercise like you've shown me there, or when you're brushing your teeth, do some heel raises. There's all those little tips and tricks of life that you can work it in. So that is interesting. And I also wanted to turn the conversation back to you, because this is clearly a passion of yours, clearly something that you're extremely knowledgeable about. Where did MoveFlow come from? Where how long has it been around? Because people watching will kind of have seen the MoveFlow logo in the background in your studio where you're at. Where did it come about, and what is the maybe the mission statement for MoveFlow?
MoveFlow is a thing that we go by is move like never before. So we don't know until we get there how good it's going to feel. We just put off and shut up. And so I really do have a passion to kind of pass on all these little snippets and Pilates so that you can really move well in life. And so it came about because it's accessible, and it's for people that are already motivated, or already on it, or already love what they're doing. It's the people who come to the studio, the people that need motivating. They're the ones that need to come to class and do class, and that's that. And then there was people that I was meeting throughout life and different experiences, and that, God, I really want to do this, but I haven't, like you just mentioned, I haven't got the time. But I know I should do it. It's going to help me, but life's busy. So it's come about for that. It's a platform where you can go on, you can access 10 minutes, you can access 20 minutes. It's got all different bite size. And the other side of it that's on there is the kind of for the people who always want to know why. Because I think when we know why, we're naturally motivated. Yeah. And like, it's my job to keep going out there and keeping up to date with it all. We go to the fascia conference. It's like, who wants to go to a fashion conference? We do. And then it's like, okay, taking that and putting it into movement, and how can that benefit people? All the research and all the latest knowledge, and that's what I'm passionate about, moving our industry along, because there's a lot of people that don't have that opportunity, and I've met with some really wonderful mentors and educationals from around the world, so I'm lucky to have had that opportunity. So then it's kind of passing that on as well, and also the equipment side that we've got on there. there's some big boys that are great, and it's good to have those people who open up the industry and set a standard, and but then it's also good to have a little bit of competition along the way.
Absolutely.
And it makes things good and it helps things evolve. And there wasn't much of that going on. There was just some really good market leaders. So it's kind of to just come in and give some options around all of that as well.
Yeah, on equipment, I as a Pilates layman, and I've seen friends start to go to Pilates classes now with all sorts of these contraptions and equipment and things. And I'm like, hold on, Pilates was a mat, and that was my ignorant, simplistic view. What is this a new thing that it's come around recently, or is this something that's happened for a while? And maybe I'm just being exposed to it, but these just look like sort of torture contraptions that people are using to do Pilates on. Please explain more.
So Joseph Pilates is named after the guy Joseph Pilates, who invented it all. So he was around in the 1930s, 40s, and he was born a really unhealthy child and was told he would only live to be the age of 40. This is like a brief history of Joseph Pilates, a quick history. And then he ended up working. So he had an interest in improving his own health. He did gymnastics, he did boxing, he did yoga. So it was actually invented and designed by a man. So we were always trying to get men to come in and just do it more, because a lot of people have that perception that it's kind of middle-aged women that do Pilates, and it is changing, but it was invented by a man. And the equipment came about because he in World War I he worked in the hospitals, and a lot of the men were in the beds, and what he had access to were the springs of the beds. And because he had an inventive mind, he started to get the men from the World War I who were recovering to kind of exercise and work with the springs in the bed. And so that from that, everybody did a lot better. There were a lot more recovery, and his inventions came from there. So the whole equipment is literally, he designed it all in the 1930s, 40s. So
Not only have I got up and learned some reset stretches, I've also learned that the Pilates was a person and created by a man in the 30s. I did not know that at all. That's going to be brand new.
Germany.
That's a good quiz question, or a good knowledge to have.
Yeah, you'll get that one.
I've got a couple more questions that I wanted to ask, slightly different. One, firstly, is asking around. I've had guests on this podcast that we've focused on the topic of menopause and supporting women through that time of their life. Is Pilates another avenue that will support people going through the menopause, but how and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So the pelvis changes throughout life, and it changes in childbirth, and it also changes during menopause. Yep. Along with the drop in estrogen and testosterone and the other changes that a woman goes through. For a lot of women, pelvic health, and if you're running as well, pelvic health, and for guys, can be an issue. And we teach a lot of pelvic health at the studio. I'm a pelvic health mentor under an amazing woman called Claire Sparrow, who's written a book called Hope for the Pelvis, which is an amazing book if you're wanting to look into that. But we look at the pelvis is the foundation of the spine, and it's also related to the foot again. And so in menopause, when all these changes are happening, the elasticity of the tissue in the pelvis changes again, and you can get all kinds of hip problems and pelvic floor issues again. So the pelvic floor is a diaphragm in itself. So again, given the right feedback, the right exercises, the right strategies, it will re-find its form. So it's a gathering mechanism. So as you breathe in, your diaphragm goes down and the pelvic floor expands, and the reverse happens on the way out. Okay. And everything comes into it. There's about 36 attachments that come in, and so it's like, you could say it's like the the core as well, the center of a lot of things. So doing Pilates in menopause will help with pelvic health issues. It'll help, as we said before, for your mind, just for kind of relaxation and focus. I experience like the only way I can experience it's like a deep cramp in my bones.
Okay.
And it really helps with movement in joints to relieve some of the aches. And of course, strengthening bones, which that's why I run, because we need to, after the age of 35, our bone density starts to drop, and it drops a lot during menopause. It drops from around 10, it can drop up to 35%.
Wow.
So it can drop a lot for women in menopause, not different in men. It still drops in men, bone density. So it can be, it's that time of life for a lot of women where a lot of things change quite quickly. And finding something that can support you and keep you on track and keep you stable and active is Pilates is definitely one of those, for sure.
So say if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, right, okay, Pilates, I'm going to start getting into that. I'm going to head online and have a look at MoveFlow. I'm going to try some bits out. I'm going to whatever. What's your advice for people that want to get into it, maybe on a mindset front or on a practical front? What's your advice for those people?
I would say have a look in your local area, so there's some good teachers. I mean, you can find us on moveflow.com because we've got classes on there, which it could be a nice intro and a nice start to see if it's for you. I would be aware that the Pilates industry is not governed that much in England. So if you've got a lot going on, so if you've got disc issues, osteoporosis, any kind of pathology, I would really look in to what kind of qualifications your teachers got. And for a kind of a measure, they say there's a level 3 mat work qualification, and it's there because it goes along kind of GCSEs and A levels and the kind of UK kind of way of assessing and processing. But what we do in a full comprehensive range is you'll train for about 2 to 3 years, and then you'll take your exam, and then you have to keep training to stay certified. So I would look, if you've got a lot going on, look for a more comprehensive trained instructor because they'll have a higher anatomical knowledge. And I train with Polestar Pilates. They're amazing. So if anybody's got a Polestar, the standard. Bassi is really good standards. There's a lot of good training companies out there, but they're kind of the bigger ones that really hold the standards high. So yeah. Do your research.
Yeah, is a piece of advice there for new people taking on Pilates. Before I ask you for a final piece of advice, I know you've given lots, but where can people go to find out more about you? You've just mentioned it there, but where, you, MoveFlow, the links will be in the description of this podcast and on the article on outsideactive.com that's related to this episode. But before I ask you for a piece of advice, thank you for your time. And where can people go to find out more? Yeah, so follow us on social, and I always reply, and you can just drop us a line if you've got a specific question that you want to ask or you're curious about anything. As I said, I love questions. I'm a why person, and I love that people ask the whys, and if I don't know, I'll find out for you. I won't make it up. I have a lot of people around that I can ask questions, and I've got a lot of support around me. But I find us on moveflow.com, follow us on social. I'm always on there gabbing on about something. So well, I've enjoyed you gabbing on about Pilates today, and it has really, I've learned a lot more and physically done a lot more in this podcast than I ever have done before.
Brilliant.
But there's all that's left is that I offered a piece of advice from Mark to you at the beginning of this podcast, talk about having an open mind and trying new things, which I think a lot of people will be doing now if you haven't done Pilates before. But now is your opportunity to leave a piece of advice for not only the listeners, but to someone coming onto the podcast as a guest in the near future.
My piece of advice would be to have moments in your day where you do that internal check-in, and you can just close your eyes, just breathe, and just kind of have a moment just to actually really check in and see how you're doing.
You know what, that relates actually really nicely to Mark, who gave the advice, because it comes back to that idea of taking time out to, for him, his message is all about being grateful and using running to be grateful and being appreciative, and using that however long it takes to run that mile or walk that mile or whatever it may be, to be appreciative. So I quite like how yours plays on from that in a slightly different way of, but checking in. It's more of like a self-help type of thing of actually just check in with yourself. We
like a body scan.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said at the beginning, you scan other people's walks, so you just want other people to scan themselves.
Scan yourself.
We get told so often to check in with other people, which is so important. We absolutely should, but also check in with yourself and take a moment out. So that's really good advice, and I look forward to passing that along. Helen, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the podcast with Helen Wragg. I hope you've learned a bit more about Pilates. And if you want to check out more, then please do by heading to Move Flow's website. Thank you, Helen, and thank you for listening. If you could please leave a review below, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening to this, then please leave a review. It massively helps. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, then please like and subscribe and send a comment. And also send this podcast to someone who you think would enjoy it just as much as you. Like I said, it makes a massive difference. I'll be back with another episode of the Outside and Active podcast. But for now, I've been Dominic Brown. Enjoy the outdoors.